Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Wrongful Conviction of Daniel Holtzclaw. Just a quick housekeeping note, as the lawyers and people like that like to say on their channels or in court. I am working on ways to optimize click-through rates and viewership based on my titles and thumbnails. And I'm working with a program that analyzes all that for me and suggests different things for me to use and things like that. So the suggestions, every suggestion that I've got and all of the other titles and what's it called, thumbnails that this program has looked at has indicated that my thumbnails are too cluttered, and I felt that way myself anyway. Basically, in order to help optimize the channel, I am taking away the entire title of Inside the Wrongful Conviction of Daniel Holtzclaw and, all of those things. But it's still the same series. It's still going to be Inside the Wrongful Conviction of Daniel Holtzclaw. It's just going to be different thumbnails now and different titles, just to help get through the see if that helps the channel at all as far as getting viewers and clicks and stuff. So I just wanted to say, if you're looking and you're seeing different thumbnails and you're like, wait a minute, is this still the same? It is still the same series. It's just going to be different titles and thumbnails for optimization purposes. So that's all I had to say about that. We are currently in episode 23, and I don't think I did put that anywhere. So this is episode 23. And so we'll just keep going forward like that. Hello, Jack. Good to see you.
Hello. Sorry I'm late. Gala dropped
Okay.
by. I'm trying
No
to get
problem.
this trying to get this loaded right here before you start.
Not a
That's
problem. Hello, Under Your Scars and Sheila Hawkins. It's great to see you guys. And thank you for being here. I'm going to try this a little bit while we're waiting for Jack to get connected, see how. I made a post, I think, on my community page a week or two ago. I did comment to everybody a month or so ago that I felt bad that I realized that the memberships are $2.99 a month. I didn't, like I mentioned at the time, I didn't understand because I was trying to do it myself. I didn't understand that I couldn't change that. And so we're stuck with $2.99. The only thing we can do now is go up, and I'm not ready to start charging people more than that. At the same time, I'm still not, haven't figured out how I want to give the members, any kinds of benefits, extra benefits and perks. So in the meantime, what I decided to do is to add a Cash App to my channel. And so it's kind of just scrolling along the bottom there. And I think it's also in the description that if you want to make a one-time donation or whenever you want to donation to Daniel, to different, his attorney's fees or, purchasing transcripts or FOIAs or whatever we need to do for Daniel. My Cash App is the $ just Rhonda 62, all one word. And, you can just do it that way. I researched my Cash App to make sure it wasn't something weird. And after a couple of weeks of thinking about it, I feel okay. So, that's always an option too. If you're unable to keep up a membership every month, or if you want to help, but you can't, you don't want to forget about a membership that you've joined for a month and forget to cancel. So for, any other reason that you want to use my Cash App, it's there for you to use. So we are going to tonight, this is testimony, the trial testimony from Rocky Gregory regarding Tabitha Barnes case. It's 150 pages long. And so I think what we're going to do is read direct examination tonight. I think Susan said she counted the pages and it was like 81 pages or something, about halfway. So I think what we'll do is read through direct examination from Gayland Gieger. And then next week will come the snark and snottiness from Rocky Gregory to Scott Adams whenever he does, what's it called? Hello, I'm struggling with words today. Cross-examination. Yes, thank you. Sorry. Gosh. So that's what we're going to do. I mean, unless there's like some crazy, no, don't stop. We want to hear that, you know, otherwise we'll stop that at the end of the direct examination. So without any further comments, well, except for I want to say hello to everybody on the panel, Cherie, Susan, Kay, and Jack. It's great to have you guys back. And I appreciate so much the work that you're putting into the reading and your character that you're putting into the reading and all that stuff. So unless there are any other comments from anybody on the panel, which you're welcome to make, I think we'll get started. Knock this out. Everybody ready?
Ready?
Yep. Ready. Yep.
Who is reading off of the screen? Cherie? I know Cherie will be.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I've got my own copy.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
I
Perfect. You're reading off my screen? Okay. All right. I'll try
Yeah.
to stay on top of it. Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and start. This is the same day, although it feels like many, many, many days. The same day as Tabitha Barnes finishing up her testimony. She finished her testimony, and then immediately after that, the same day, November 13th, 2015, they called Rocky Gregory. So we will, Cherie, if you'd like to start on line 17.
Okay. Counsel, come up. I thought this witness was done.
Well, he hasn't testified as to Miss Barnes' case, Your Honor. I was recalling him to testify about Miss Barnes. He only testified as to Shardarion Hill's case.
Okay, so is that what you're planning to do? Just?
Oh, well, Judge, I thought we'd discussed that.
I hadn't heard about it.
I apologize if not.
Well, it's my understanding that and I would just ask that we just, I don't know why we need to do it that way. I wouldn't. I know what Gayland's doing here, and he started out apparently after every witness testifying, he wants to put the detective on that as responsible for that witness's investigation. I, at this point, would think there would be, it's judicial, economically smart, just to let all the witnesses testify and then put the detectives on to testify to everything they've done. And at this point, I will not interpose an objection of doing it that way. I think breaking it up like this is, again, going to drag the trial out forever.
And I apologize.
It's obviously not going to make any sense for him. To start talking about other people right now.
Well, of course. And I apologize, Your Honor. My memory is we talked about it all together. I know we've talked about a lot of things. That's neither here nor there. The reason I think it would become incredibly confusing if we waited until the end is that we've got AVL maps for 3 different dates with Miss Barnes, plus lineups, plus CAD calls, plus running them on CIU. And to try to ask this jury to remember in 2 weeks what Miss Barnes said about the time the police officer was at her house and all that, I think it's going to become incredibly confusing. There are things that are important that are subtle, for example. we haven't called the first officer who came to the scene, Ivan Venegas, because he's not here yet. He's going to be here Monday. I was trying to fill in. The AVL shows him leaving, as Miss Barnes has said before Officer Holtzclaw left. But it's those types of things that I'll admit this is somewhat unusual, but to try to then ask this jury to remember in 2 weeks when we get Detective Gregory back on the stand, those types of details, it seems not to be.
This is what I'll allow you to do. I'll allow you to do that, but make darn sure we don't start going back to other witnesses.
Absolutely, Judge.
With Detective Gregory, or I'm going to cut you off on that.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, call your next witness.
Detective Gregory.
Detective Gregory, let me remind you, you're still under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, when did you become involved with investigating the allegations made by Tabitha Barnes?
It was, I believe, in August.
Of 2014?
I believe so.
All right. Sir, and how did you come in contact with her? Why did you make that initial contact?
We had an investigation in reference to Officer Holtzclaw possibly assaulting other victims. We put together a list of any female that he came in contact with. After we started seeing kind of a pattern that there was more and more victims. So then we decided to go out and start double checking to see if we had even more victims from what we originally thought we had. And Tabitha Barnes was on the list that I had of a subject that he came in contact.
Oh, how was that list prepared? Because would this be relevant for other ladies who may testify in this trial as well, who are alleged victims?
Yes.
And how was that list prepared, if you recall, which you then began looking at to determine if they needed to be made contact with?
Well, Detective Davis and I's supervisor, Tim Musney, and had went through this list of, it's a Varuna checklist that we talked about before, of females that he's come in contact with and ran. And that was our very first list. Lieutenant Musney went down through that list and had verified some females that had like a past history, maybe prostitution, or had some kind of drug problems, drug arrests. And so that's kind of the list we started off in the very beginning.
And Varuna is the database the jury's heard about already that shows if a report's been entered or if a field contact has been made, those types of things?
That's correct.
All right. From that list, was Tabitha Barnes identified as someone that you felt should be contacted to see if anything, well, if she had any relevant information?
Yes.
And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
You heard Mr. Adams ask a little bit about the first contact and how that occurred. Can you just briefly kind of tell me how it is that you got to where you could interview her and talk about what had happened?
I believe I tried to make phone calls first with no luck. Seemed like the phone calls was disconnected, or phone lines that we had for a number. So on that August day, I went to her residence at 1530 Northeast 15 and had come in contact with her. Just knocked on her door, met her then.
And what was her demeanor and how'd that go?
Right off the bat, she just kind of gave me a look like, what are you doing here? and you could just kind of see her wheels spinning a little bit. And I basically told her, I said that, we had a tip that maybe that you were sexually assaulted. Just kind of put it like that. And her head just sunk down. And she said, "Who told you?" And then we went from there.
Well, let me ask you, Detective, why would you interject the concept of I'm investigating a sexual assault? Why would you just not make contact with her? Take some generic questions like, I'm here to see if there's anything you need to talk to me about or anything like that, or however. Why did you choose to approach it that way?
It's such an odd question. I didn't want to lead her into, I didn't bring up Officer Holtzclaw's name, anything like that. My whole thing, Detective Davis and I's whole thing, was trying to make sure we had truthful victims that we didn't feel like that was lying. So we just kind of put it very vaguely to them, or like I did with Tabitha, to see what their response would be. And we just kind of worked from there. Also, kind of to just kind of gauge a little bit on whether, well, tell me the truth, really.
Well, eventually, were you able to obtain information that was relevant in the investigation, essentially consistent with what Miss Barnes testified to today?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Well, after you received her allegations that something inappropriate had happened, what did you do then in your investigation to try to determine or not if that's accurate information?
And back to verify. Once she let me know if she was sexually assaulted by an officer, she kind of gave me a rough estimate of the time she could remember, best she could recollect. I went back, verified. She kind of described the officer, which I believed, she was saying his name was Spike. She described Officer Holtzclaw. Went back to previous contacts that she's had with the police and come up and verified dates and times and interactions and how she described everything using AVL and our other sources, Aruna, CIU contacts, where he did run.
Detective, in this investigation and in others, as other ladies were identified, is this the initial contact done off of that Varuna list? And then the other things like CIU, AVL, those types of things, did those come second after you got some type of a disclosure?
That's correct.
And that was the routine you took in this investigation?
Yes.
I'm going to show you number 166 and ask if you can identify what number 166 is, sir.
This is going to be a Varuna list of who Officer Holtzclaw had ran on specific dates.
Is this part of the list that Lieutenant Musney had put together and seeing all the different people that Officer Holtzclaw ran?
Yes.
And is Tabitha Barnes' name on it?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I'd offer 166.
No objection.
All right, State's Exhibit number 166 will be admitted.
Detective, I know the jury has heard about Varuna, but essentially, this is the list that Detective Musney, Lieutenant Musney, put together. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, now.
Judge, may I approach very briefly?
All right, come up.
I don't object to this exhibit. I do object to it being highlighted and drawing unnecessary attention. I didn't.
Well, I mean, the reason it's highlighted is that's the one that goes with this. I can try to go through, and if there's ones that aren't highlighted.
I just ask we substitute it without an unhighlighted portion. I don't object to the exhibit. I just don't. I hate highlights.
Do you have another one?
I don't know that I have one on me right this minute, Judge, but I'll take it down and just ask him.
I don't mind him showing it right now. I'm just talking about going back to the jury room. I don't mind right now it being highlighted. I'm talking about what we introduce and give to the jury. I'd prefer it just not be highlighted.
I'll go back through and try to do that, and if the court believes it's appropriate.
Okay, make life easier.
That's fine. Detective Gregory, a few questions about this, just so that we're all on the same page. Does this show on 2/27, about 14 minutes after midnight, the DH-1782 ran Tabitha Barnes in the Varuna system?
Yes,
Is DH-1782 Officer Holtzclaw?
that's correct.
So that's the list that started you to make inquiry, or that prompted you to make inquiry with Tabitha Barnes?
Yes.
So the jury understands, again, it gets somewhat complicated. We're referring to that as a Varuna list, but that is that what a police officer sees when he runs someone in Varuna?
No.
Okay. That's just a list that a run was made. If you actually run someone in Varuna, they've heard it, but just briefly, give me a highlight of what an officer will see in his police car when he runs someone in Varuna.
I'm going to put in, say, John Doe. It'll come up current address, last contact we've had with them, current address, phone numbers, previous contacts, their previous addresses, and also their criminal history.
And detective, let me approach again and show you these two maps and see if you recognize those. After getting your information, you went back, and AVL is one of the things you did. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm going to hand you 160 and 163. Do you recognize those two different maps?
Yes.
And are those maps that show the location of Officer Holtzclaw's car at the relevant times on February 27th, as well as Officer Venegas's car during that same time period?
Yes.
No objection.
Offer 160 and 163, Your Honor.
All right, state exhibit number 160 and 163
Yes, sir.
will be admitted.
The jury's seen a map already, and I think the call sign on that map regarding Officer Holtzclaw was 2 Charlie 37. Do you remember testifying to that in Chardarion Hill's case?
Yes.
All the other maps that will be presented in this case, do they show Officer Holtzclaw as 2 Charlie 45?
That's correct.
What's a switch? Why does it go from 2 Charlie 37 to 2 Charlie 45?
It's just going to be the district that he was in. 2 Charlie 45, that's his call unit, but his district was mainly, instead of like Charlie 3, it's Charlie 4.
All right. The location on this map, detective, if I put it there, is the house that's highlighted with the circle and the arrow to it. Is that Miss Barnes' residence?
Yes, it is.
And is that at the corner of 15th and Jordan?
Yes, it is.
All right. Whenever I look at these indicators, each little sector, is that where the AVL is hit based upon the testimony we heard from Joe Hill?
Yes.
And ideally it's supposed to hit in the center line, but it appears that may not always be the case as far as the grid. Is that correct? Center line on the street.
That's what I understand, yes.
All right. Sir, in that regard, for example, it shows Detective Holtzclaw, for example, at right here, February 27th, 2014 at 12:11:59 seconds a.m., correct?
Yes.
And that's not military time. That's just regular old time.
That's correct.
All right. And it shows 0 knots based on what we learned about AVL, correct?
Yes.
Then it also has some other times, and there's different times on her. For example, if I move it to this one at 12:29:33, it shows 0 speed, correct?
Yes.
And it looks like this one prints that locator twice, because right beside it is the same information. Is that right?
Yes.
But according to the AVL, at least, we see from 12:11:59 a.m. to 12:29:33 a.m., it appears Officer Holtzclaw's car is at that location, give or take 5 minutes.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you States Exhibit 160, 2 Charlie 51. Are you aware in your investigation that that is the patrol car that Officer Venegas was driving?
That's correct.
And if I back it up over to this location, is that the intersection of 15th and Jordan?
Yes.
And is that house, the house that we've identified that Miss Barnes was living in at the time?
Yes.
If I look at this exhibit, sir, it shows at 12:14:22, it's hitting in the center line again, but he's at 0 speed.
Yes.
5 minutes later, here's a hit. It's still at 0 speed at 12:19:23, correct?
That's correct.
When I go over to the next locator, that would occur after 12:19. That shows up, and we have 12:21:29. He's at speed 9. It appears that he's moving. Is that right?
Yes.
And then going on down the street, we get a hit at 12:21:35 and 12:21:40. For some reason, it hit every 5 seconds, and it shows him moving consistently in that direction, correct?
That's correct.
So was it significant to you in your investigation whenever you saw and compared in States Exhibit 163 and 160 that shows Officer Venegas moving at 12:21:29, but Officer Holtzclaw still at 0 at 12:29:33?
Yes.
Why was that significant to you?
Well, because Officer Venegas cleared off the call, was done with the call, and Officer Holtzclaw was still there.
Is that consistent with what Miss Barnes had told you about what had happened on February 27th of 2014?
Yes.
Oh, in what regard?
She said that Officer Venegas had left the scene before Officer Holtzclaw, and after everybody was made to go inside, far as her family and friends, They just left Officer Holtzclaw and her there alone.
Well, in your opinion, was that corroborative with what she had told you happened on that night?
Yes.
Judge, I'm ready to go to another exhibit if you want to keep going.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll be a good time to stop for this evening. It's about 5 minutes after 5. We're getting ready to break for the weekend, so we'll be in recess until Monday at 9. Again, let me admonish you, don't discuss the case. Don't try to find out anything about the case. Don't let anyone discuss the case with you. Don't watch any news reportings, read any newspapers, look at any Facebook, anything at all. It's imperative that everything that you use to make your decision come from right inside this courtroom. If anyone should try to discuss the case with you, you'll need to notify me or my staff immediately. So with that, Mr. Holtzclaw, you'll be excused until 9 o'clock Monday morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I appreciate your attention today, your patience, and you'll be excused in recess until 9 o'clock Monday morning. All right, thank you. We'll be in recess until 9 o'clock Monday morning.
Judge, just for housekeeping, today obviously didn't go as we anticipated it would, so I don't know how you want to do it. I can go ahead and put, I think, everything of Detective Gregory's in, and then bring in Officer Venegas to testify about his involvement, and then bring in also Terry Williams as the man that was in the house. And I think you'll actually remember him from the bond hearing, probably. He's in Lawton and is supposed to be getting on a bus first thing Monday morning, so it may be a little disconjointed, really. But I'm not going to ask counsel to stop with Gregory and then put Terry on and then start again. I'm going to try to just say, did you learn something from Terry Williams that was relevant to you? And there may be some, he may have to respond with, he told me this or he told me that before Terry Williams testifies. And I don't know if that's the way you want to do it or not. I know it's not the optimal way to do it. I'm just trying to keep moving since we had 15 more minutes to do something.
Well,
And I'll do it however.
put on your case however you want to put it on.
I'm just trying to give everybody a heads up, and I'm not trying to make it more difficult than it is. It just is what it is.
Well, sometimes when you're dealing with what you're dealing with, you got to just
Okay.
Roll with it.
Okay.
let the record reflect we're out of the presence of the jury. They've been excused for the evening, and counsel for the state is present, counsel for the defendant. Mr. Holtzclaw has been taken upstairs. Do you wish to have him back down here?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
When we broke the last time, Mr. Rowland came down. He had been out to
Mr. Rowland is the first assistant.
the first assistant, Scott Rowland, the first assistant here in Oklahoma County, went out to the hotel where Ms. Barnes was staying, visited with the manager of the hotel, and was told that they had given her some staging room, accusing her of smoking. There's nothing that I heard from Mr. Rowland. He assured me that there was no theft going on, nor were there any claims of any theft. I've known Mr. Rowland for a long time. I have no reason to dispute that. I simply stated what my suspicions were when I first talked to Ms. Barnes, which my suspicions were running crazy from our discussions. I'm totally satisfied with the representations that Mr. Rowland has provided to me, that there is no allegations of any impropriety on her behalf of stealing anything. Basically, what he told us was, I believe he says that she was down there wandering around and was confronted by some hotel staff. eventually she requested to receive the room where she stayed that eventually I guess they charged the sister for. This is stuff I really don't care about, and nor would I even anticipate even trying to get into it with her on cross. To me, it was irrelevant. So I'm satisfied on behalf of Mr. Holtzclaw that the answer is that the questions that I've had have been answered.
Okay. And Miss Barnes is, as far as these proceedings go, do we think she's totally completed?
I don't have anything for her.
Judge, I believe that to be the case, Your Honor.
She lives out of state, right?
As I understand it, and I don't know for sure, I know at one point they had her detained because of her behavior in the hallway. I've not asked OCPD to do anything in that regard. I don't know if is she still in, has she been released?
Kimberly Paulsred. I think she's in custody.
She's in custody? Okay. I'll have to deal with that. But as far as these proceedings go, Your Honor, I don't have any reason to recall her. And as far as a decision that if there's a misdemeanor charge to be had or not, does counsel want me to get back with him?
No, I don't. At this point, I don't care.
Okay. Then I'll try to handle that based on what we've got, because I don't know all that happened with that regard, Your Honor. But she's released from the state subpoena. I don't anticipate needing her back.
Well, let me say this for the record, that even though she admitted to being sarcastic and playing a few games in the courtroom, her demeanor was totally different than it was this morning, in the respect that she seemed to be coherent, to be able to remember when she wanted to remember, basically from her testimony, and seemed to comprehend what was being asked by the state and what was being asked by defense attorney. Whether she wanted to answer or not, that's a different story. But I think the record will reflect that when the question was asked, she answered it, and that the court doesn't have any concerns that she was inebriated while she was on the witness stand or unable to be a competent witness in the 2601 meaning of a competent witness.
With those statements by counsel and those by the court, Your Honor, I have nothing else to add at this point.
I don't either, Your Honor.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. I just want to say something really quick, then we'll start again. For anybody who's been watching the Karen Reed trial or any part of the Karen Reed trial this last month, I think it's safe to say that if you've been paying attention, prosecutor Lally, with practically every single question, he begins, what if any, who if anyone, what if anyone, who if anyone was driving the ambulance? So his Lolly's questions, starting his questions like that, has become very, very frustrating, obnoxious, and annoying. Everything else aside, what I want to say is I think that when you're listening to these transcripts, because it hit me a few minutes ago with Gieger, was that significant to you? What, if any, significance? I was like, oh my God, I just felt like I was in Massachusetts in the Karen Reed trial room all of a sudden. You're going to hear that a lot, though, from Gieger. Was that significant to you? What was the significance of that to you? And it's really, I know we've kind of talked about it, some of us before, that is kind of obnoxious by Gieger. Was that significant to you? Yes or no? Why or why not? What significance did that have? It's really obnoxious and annoying. So I don't know if it's an obnoxious attorney thing, but
I noticed in a recent cross-examination by a prosecutor that after every question he goes, right, Right.
right?
And for like over an hour, that really gets on your nerves. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. it does, it
Imagine
gets
how the
annoying.
jurors feel
Oh, I
having
can't
to
even
sit there in
imagine
the
that
jury
chair.
box. Yeah.
Oh, those poor people. Yeah, the Karen Reed, we might just have to do a live sometime just to get away from, all of this for a minute and just have a gripe session on the Karen Reed trial one of these nights or on a different, different night altogether or something. But that shit is crazy. So anyway, I just wanted to warn everybody who's unfamiliar with Gieger's style when he's talking to these detectives. You're going to hear that a lot. Was that any significance to you? It's really annoying. So, okay, back to the next day. Now we have had a great weekend, I suppose, and the court on line 4, please.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Monday. Let the record reflect that all the members of the jury are present. Counsel for the state, counsel for the defendant. The defendant is present. Is the state ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
All right. If you'll call your witness back to the stand.
I will, Judge.
All right, Detective Gregory, let me remind you, you're still under oath. Go ahead and have a seat.
Detective Gregory, whenever I think, stopped for the weekend, I believe I just left off showing you the 2 AVL maps for Officer Venegas as well as Officer Holtzclaw on February 27th, 2014. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And during that event, I believe that you had told me that based upon those 2 exhibits, it appeared that Officer Venegas had left approximately 8 or 9 minutes before Officer Holtzclaw left, according to the AVL. Something in that time frame. Is that correct? Was it like 2 minutes or
Yes.
something, actually? It wasn't really 8 or 9 minutes, guys, was it?
No, I think it was like
I'm
4 or
thinking
5
it
minutes.
was.
8 or 9?
Huh.
I remember thinking it was like 2 or 3.
I have another question. I
Yeah.
think you all
Okay.
answered me before. When Gieger was had these exhibits, they weren't like they were just pieces of paper. Like they weren't like up on a board where he could show the jury, dink, 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 or up on the Elmo or whatever you call it.
Yeah, I think they had an Elmo.
Okay, so there was something beyond a piece of paper that they're okay. I just want to make sure.
I mean, they did use the Elmo because they had some different kind of AVL maps for when the stories don't match the AVL.
Yeah,
Then
right.
they did these other kind of what did they call those, Rhonda? Animated
Yeah,
thing, which
yeah,
was really interesting.
which were just as inaccurate because we learned that those, depending on when you pull it, just like with the staple AVL actually, but depending on when you pull that animated AVL, I tried to share one time and it didn't work. But they sorry, Cherie, I just muted you. But they weren't always accurate. Like if you pulled it again and then it would change the place or the time or the exact location, and when you pulled it again, a month later it would be. So those animated ones did not look incredibly accurate as far as I was concerned. So
I think what the complaint ended up being was that the state had all the power to keep running these AVL reports until the time plots or whatever that they wanted to come up that would look more incriminating. So they could run it 100 times and then choose which map they wanted to use. And the defense, of course, didn't have access to run reports of the AVL plots. So I think
Yeah.
there will be some discussion about that in this trial, though.
Yeah.
Adams brings that up, I think, with, I was going to say Copeland, but I can't remember who it is actually.
I can't. I wanted to say Gieger, Rosetta Gray, but I can't be sure.
That
Sorry, go
was
ahead,
my
Sheree.
other guess.
I'm
Okay.
just looking this up, and it looks to me like Venegas was there from 12:14 to 12:19, or I'm sorry, 12:21. So 7 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
almost 8 minutes. And Daniel was there from 12:11 to 12:29.
So Venegas left when?
18.
When did Venegas leave?
He left at 12:21.
Oh, okay. So that is correct.
Wait,
12:21, and Daniel left at 12:29.
19.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was wrong.
Well, and I don't know. To
You know,
me, it doesn't even really matter.
It says 12:14. He's hitting at 0 speed, but he could have been there 5 minutes prior to that, right? Or within 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. Not only that, the amount of time that Daniel just to Charlie 45 was on that call was a typical amount of time that you would have somebody, on a Terry stop or pulled over or whatever. So it wasn't like this extremely lengthy amount of time. Same with the Liggins video stop. That stop was only about 13 and a half minutes, and they made it sound like it was more than 15 minutes. And oh my God, what were you doing for 15 minutes? So.
Okay, it goes from Venegas leaving at 12:21 to Daniel still at 0 at 12:29. So yeah, that's about 8 minutes.
I wish if I were a logical or a responsible somebody sharing content, I would have my other monitor hooked up so that I could pull all of that up for you at the same time that I'm doing this, but I don't. And so I'll try to get that done this summer so that I can share all that stuff.
It was also,
I can.
it was also, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
It was also Tabitha's house, and he suspected it was a drug house, right?
He had been watching her house. That's why he was
Right.
coming around doing a knock and talk or whatever. He had been watching her house.
Yeah. So I can see how he took more time with her than.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that he.
Do we have access to his notes on her Varuna?
To Daniel's notes?
Yeah, because, he got drilled in this case for using Varuna to find women who had, all those things that Gregory just testified about. History
Prostitution,
of
drugs,
and all that. They were saying that's why he was searching the names in Varuna, when actually he was just using Varuna the way that every other officer uses Varuna, as an investigative tool to read the notes about someone, who they were stopped with last time, where they were stopped, just getting to know the person that he's watching.
Right.
And maybe that doesn't really come into play as much in some of the other neighborhoods in Oklahoma City. But there are quite a few neighborhoods in Oklahoma City that officers would find that as a valuable tool. And they can also use it.
The other officer probably wasn't nearly as thorough as Daniel, or that woman didn't have as many notes on her, I don't know.
I mean, Daniel also used that That's probably how he found Adara Gardner's mom's phone number too, when he called Adara's mom that night to say.
Yeah, I think that's kind of obvious too. When you look at all of that, all of the reports and everything on Adara, at least from what I remember reading through all that, I was like, oh, well, this is how he got her mom's number. He was, or at whatever it was, the information that they got, because that's, plus she had just made that report earlier that day, or whatever, the day before, Adara's mom, from Adara, calling her in as a runaway. So,
Right.
it was all legitimate. The way Daniel used all of these different programs were legitimate tools, like Kay said, and that officers use all over the country, not just in Oklahoma or Oklahoma City.
And in the depositions, pretty much, I think just about every officer, if not all, said that that's what they use Runa for. It's a tool,
Yep.
to find information.
That was the point. Yeah, good point. That was the point I was going to make sure that's funny too, when you get access to those and are able to finally read them. They don't realize why they're being asked that question in the deposition.
Yes, it's all very eye-opening. Go ahead, Jack.
Uh,
I thought you.
no, wasn't me.
Okay, I thought you were going to say something. Okay.
No.
What line are we
on? We are on
2. Is it just
2? 2
or 3 or 4?
Yeah.
It's line 4.
In regards,
line 4.
Okay. In regards to that traffic stop, excuse me, well, I guess technically they were in a car when the stop was made. Well, in regard to that encounter, are there several other exhibits that you researched within the archives of the Oklahoma City Police Department records in order to determine if there was any other relevant information as to that contact?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to approach, and if I may.
You may approach.
Sir, I'm going to give you 162, 164, 165, and 167. And if you just take a minute and look through those documents and see if you can recognize what they are.
Yes, I do.
Are those essentially internal documents that are maintained within the course of business for the police department regarding specifically the contact Officer Holtzclaw had with Miss Barnes on February 27th?
Yes.
And do they appear to be accurate, other than maybe looks like there might be a photocopy was made where a highlight was on? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, other than that, are they consistent with your memory of what were produced to you from the custodian of records?
Yes.
Well, I'd offer 162, 164, 165, and 167.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. State's exhibit numbers. Number 162, 164, 65, 67 will be admitted without objection.
Detective, we talked Friday about the AVL maps, and that's the GPS, correct?
Yes.
All right. 167. I don't know that the jury's seen one of these documents yet. That's 167. Can you tell us what this document is?
It's the lineup for Spring Lake Division. It's for February the 26th. Just telling you who's on or off as far as patrol officers.
Okay. And the jury, I anticipate, may see several of these before this case is concluded. But in this event, we know that the contact was on February 27th. Why did you run the February 26th lineup?
It's for Officer Holtzclaw was on second shift, which goes from 4 p.m., like on this day, February 26th. He started a shift at 4 p.m., and it concludes at 2 a.m. the following morning on February the 27th.
All right. So, and the contact based upon the other documentation we've had shows that the actual contact with Miss Barnes occurred shortly after midnight. Is that right?
That's correct.
And just so that we can get a feel for what these documents show, I see that there's a date here. It says Wednesday, February 26, 2014.
Yes,
Is that the day of the shift?
that's correct.
But then when I look over a little bit, I see another date, March 26th, and then I see another date, March 13th. What are those dates?
Well, March 26th is for a traffic arraignment. Whenever a citation is made for a traffic citation, you mark down when they're supposed to arrive to court. And then on the March 13th, that's the parking arraignment for a parking citation.
And is that something that's on all the shift lineups, basically telling the, I don't know why it's echoing now. And is that something that's on all the shift lineups, basically telling the officers that if you write a ticket on this day, there's a spot on the ticket where they say you have to show up to court? Is that right?
That's correct.
And that's the day that the officer knows they're supposed to plug in to give the citizen, if they give that citizen a ticket.
Yes,
Well, likewise with the parking ticket, you write in the date for them to come to court to pay the parking ticket, correct?
that's correct.
Holy cow, this is so much crap. All right, I'll
It's
go back
unnecessary.
over. Yeah, what the hell's he doing this parking ticket thing for?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go back over here. When I look right there, let's do it that way. That first column, what's that mean when it says on?
It means if they're on duty or not.
All right, and so that's where you look on this document to see if the individual officer whose names appear, and the way it is on the screen, the names of the officers appear to the far right.
Yes.
So we know that, for example, Jay Dutton was on duty. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. The bottom of that first little section I see is 2C45. Is that 2 Charlie 45?
Yes.
And is that Officer Holtzclaw?
Oh my God.
Yes, it is.
Can we get the jury all pillows, please?
I mean, he's asked that same question like 50 times throughout the trial. Is 2 Charlie 45 Officer Holtzclaw? Yes, it is.
What's that 1782?
That's his commission or badge number.
Now, just so we don't get confused, when I go over, it says O beside that. Do you know what that column means?
I'm not too familiar with that one.
All right. But the next one, if I look at the top, it says LT, and then it says off, 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 off.
Judge, we will stipulate that Officer Holtzclaw was on duty on February 26th, going on to the morning hours of the 27th.
That's fine, Judge. I just want to make sure these documents are going to be in evidence. We know what they're saying.
Even though it's irrelevant. Go ahead.
All right, very well.
Thank you. The off means what?
Just officer.
All right. So, and then you see Holt's Claw, correct?
Yes,
All right. But so the way these documents work, if we want to see if somebody's on duty, you look at that first column.
that's correct.
All right. Now I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 165. Tell us what this is. What's this?
It's an incident detail report in reference to a specific call that was made through our CAD system.
All right. So we've talked about a CAD report, correct?
Yes,
And is the CAD report the dispatcher that tells where the officer is and what the officer is doing?
yes,
All right. And is this a document that's computer generated by every time an officer calls in for a CAD stop, one of these is created?
Oh,
yes,
Whether it's a traffic stop, whether they're out on a subject, whether they're responding to a burglary call or anything like that, a document like this is going to be produced.
yes,
I noticed on this one it's categorized as a traffic stop. Is that correct?
yes,
All right. And then when I look here, the incident date says the date's there 2/27/14, and then now is this military time?
that's correct.
So this call, at least, are these generated by an officer calling in and talking to a dispatcher on the radio? Uh, that's one of the ways to do it, correct?
Yes,
All right. So this was initiated according to the computer whenever someone pushed the button at 7 minutes and 44 seconds past midnight.
yes,
The location. If I look down a little bit of the traffic stop that's referred to above is what?
Northeast 15th and North Jordan Avenue.
They speak the same language.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
consistent with the address that Miss Barnes said she was living at and parked in front of on the evening. Is that correct?
Yes,
All right. Sir, there's a lot of other information on here as the document continues, but whenever you get to this line right here that says incident closed, what does that mean? Ooh, I don't know.
Suspect.
This,
It means the incident closed?
Hmm.
wow.
Jesus.
That's when it's the officer's cleared off. The call's basically over.
So in comparing the start time then to the end time, the start time, according to what the dispatcher was told, would be 7:44 and 12:07:44, correct?
Yes,
All right. Now, in this one, the incident says it's closed at 29 minutes after midnight and 33 seconds, correct?
yes.
Okay. Do you know what the VisiNet mobile reference is there at the end of that?
Not for sure. Not for sure.
Let me ask this question. Is it possible for an officer to close the call within his car by just typing into the computer?
Yes,
Is it also possible to call the dispatcher and tell them I'm leaving?
yes,
Okay. With the VisitNet mobile interface, does that indicate to you that the officer closed the call by just hitting the computer and clearing it?
That's correct.
My God, Giger's just testifying completely, and all
Yeah.
Dumb Rocky has to do is say yes, no, that's correct. Uh-huh.
That's it.
Adam his hair should have been on fire and complaining to the judge. Is he going to ask a question? Or is he going to testify and get the officer to agree with him for detective?
No, he can't ask a question because, when he takes a chance and asks a question, Gregory doesn't know the answer to it. He doesn't know what the VisitNet mobile interface is.
Right.
So,
Right.
here, let me ask that another way where I tell you what it is and then you just say yes.
Exactly.
Freaking Dumbo. All right. The time that Officer Holtzclaw is purported to be at 15th and Jordan, according to State's Exhibit 165, were they consistent with the times that Tabitha Barnes told you about whenever you first interviewed her?
Well, of course. Yes.
But actually they were not, because she didn't give any relevant time frames with any of these 3 alleged incidents. So,
well, initially,
Why?
remember initially she gave these solid times that they happened on different days. Remember when she said, that was around, and she gives like a specific time. Like, she would never remember that shit.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's
I
not
mean,
the time
you're thinking
he needs
about
it to be.
how far in the past is this from when she's being interviewed? I mean, she has no clue what day, what time, how long it lasted. She
This
couldn't
is over a
possibly remember
year
those
later,
things.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You see, this is November of 2015. We're at trial here, and she's on the stand. And the very first
But
time,
even from her first interview, she
right?
wouldn't be able to remember all those specifics.
No, but she was making them up, and you can tell that she was making them up by listening to the recordings. Go back to Brian Bates. Go back to Bates Investigates podcast. To her, he'll play her entire interview. Rhonda's played it too on this channel, but you can actually even pull up a transcript and scroll down to the part you want to hear where she states these specific times. And it's not what Rocky wants her or needs her to say, because he's really needs it to match the ABL. And she's acting like she remembers specifically because she was pacifically, I mean.
I was just going to say pacifically.
Specifically.
Because it was so traumatizing, and it scared her child.
She looked at her watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
She's a pisser, man.
Can't even hear those words. Wicked pissa. I can't even hear any of those words anymore. I'm really sorry for anybody who hears this who's from Massachusetts. I apologize. I feel sorry for you folks out there right now. Okay, sorry.
Are we on 24?
I think.
Oh, is it 24?
I think 24. Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, 24.
Gonna show you states number 164. Do you recognize what this document is?
Yes. This is our crime information unit log. Whenever somebody calls in and tries to run a subject for wants and warrants.
Okay. Different than the CAD system?
Yes.
But yet another dispatcher. And do the officers give names of individuals when they want to run?
Yes.
All right. Well, the date of this one, well, and again, so that they understand how this works. That shows 2/26/14. Is that correct?
Yes, that's when that call log was started.
All right. And again, this is not computer generated. This is obviously handwritten.
Oh my God.
Yes.
So the 2/26/14, page 1, shows that that's the time that this page began.
What?
No, they
I think
started
you must be
they
going through the incident detail report that shows.
started earlier and they just didn't write it down. Come on, Gieger. My God. The fuck, man.
I'm gonna close this for really quick, and I'm gonna show the. I feel like I need to show these exhibits. I've got them handy, but let me close this really quick, just so you guys have an idea of what the hell this fool's talking about. Give me 1 minute.
It's just confusing. I just know if I was on a jury, he's talking about so much irrelevant stuff, and then he's asking the same question over and over. And again, he knows he's already said it. He knows he has. And again, blah 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 blah. The 19th time I've said this, and
He's
I
just
told you what to
trying
say.
yeah, he's just trying to confuse the jury. He does
It
it with
worked.
every single accuser.
Yeah, it worked. My opinion.
And he's talking about you can't have the detectives come on at the end and testify to each accuser because it would be confusing.
Yeah.
If he wanted to try to make it not confusing, he could.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of flip through these really quick just to give folks an idea of what's being talked about. So this is just going back to exhibit, I don't have it marked, exhibit. This is Officer Venegas's AVL on this one. So this is where they're talking about where Venegas pulled up, and you can see that Venegas came to the scene from this south direction going headed north. And then this is all Officer Venegas's timestamps right there on that one. This one is the daily, it's his daily activity report. I don't think they've talked about that yet. This is Daniels, Officer Holtzclaw's AVL information on the very first incident on March 3rd or February 27th, I believe. And I just know that because of the time. I didn't put the date in there. I need to fix that, but I just know because of the time. So this is the same thing that we just looked at for Officer Venegas's. This one is the log sheet that they were just talking about. That's handwritten. This is filled out by the dispatcher, if I'm not mistaken. So
that's correct.
Yeah, these are not, there's one in every single accuser's case of these. All this is really doing is showing, that he called in such and such a call. And they're talking about down here, I believe it's this on the left side is where you can see the officer's call number. This is C45 to Charlie 45. And this shows where he's stopped Tabitha Barnes. And then just her identifiers are in right there. So that's kind of what I think they're talking about right now. And this one also has Angela Cooper. So we have Tabitha and Angela Cooper. I'm not really sure what that says right there. But anyway, that's who those two were the two together on the first incident. And then incident detail report, I think they started talking about this. This is basically the information that I think the officer fills out in the computer. And here's where it says incident status closed. Because, that's what's filled out at the end of the encounter, the interaction.
I think the officers contribute to this report, but this is actually generated based on things that happen. So
Right.
this
Okay, yeah.
detail report encompasses basically all of the other reports. So it'll say
Right.
who was dispatched first when they arrive, who was dispatched second when they arrive, who leaves, that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And
So, and I know it's not very big, but
in a stop where there are a lot more officers, like when Tabitha's microwave got stolen off her porch, this detail
in
would
the
have
box.
looked a lot different because there were more officers there than two, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, that's right. I misspoke on that. This is not. It is computer based on the computer clocks and all that different stuff, and inputs from verbal inputs from officers and dispatchers. But yes, it's an encompassing, all-encompassing situation. So this is the VisiNet mobile interface that they were talking about, where it says incident closed. So I'm just trying to give you guys an idea, because I want you to be able to understand. I need to see things. I need to see what it looks like. It's hard for me to just listen to a description and try to make sense. This is all part of that same incident report. So, yeah, this VisiNet log goes on and on and on for quite a bit. Okay, so, all right, so I'll leave that at that, and we'll go back to
line 19.
Yes.
But then it goes on, does it not? And if you look over here, it looks like it's 2,300 hours.
Yes.
And so it starts on February 26th at 11 p.m.
Yes.
And then whatever happens after that until the page is full just continues. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When I go down to the part that's shaded in the gray, first column is 2 Charlie 45. Is that Holtzclaw? Well, it says Charlie 45.
Yes, yes, it is.
And does Miss Barnes' name appear there?
Yes.
Under Miss Barnes, what's the name you see?
Angela Cooper.
And is that the individual that Miss Barnes told you was with her that night?
Yes.
And then when I go on over, you can still see that shaded line that has the ends in Tabitha. It looks like on the line below Miss Cooper, looks like there's a CL. What does that mean to you?
Means clear. She had no warrants.
Well, but on the line above, there's some writing. Can you help me understand what the significance of that writing on the line where Miss Barnes appears?
Yes. To the far right, circled, it shows that she had 3 arrest warrants, and then those are the codes for each warrant. DP1, FA2, that's failure to appear. Can't quite read the last one there.
Well, in any event, there's 3 different codes, meaning 3 different warrants.
Yes.
Seeing that on the CIU log, was that significant to you in your investigation as it came to Miss Barnes' case?
Yes.
Why?
Well, she said she had warrants, and Officer Holtzclaw advised her she had those warrants on her.
Well, the jury's heard information previously about a field interview card, and I think there's a blank one in evidence. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to determine whether or not a field interview card was filled out corresponding to Mr. Officer Holtzclaw's contact with either Tabitha Barnes or Angela Cooper?
There was not one filled out and turned in. No.
Well, does that surprise you? I don't know. I don't know if that's the right word. Is that significant to you as a detective? Or explain to me, would you expect there to be one, or would you not expect there to be one in this situation?
Lord.
Not necessarily. No.
Oh, okay. And what do you mean by that?
Means no.
It's really, that one's at the officer's discretion. If obviously he knew that Tabitha had warrants. If he technically, he should have just placed her under arrest. As far as field interviews, that's when you come in contact with a gang member or somebody there's not enough there to arrest them. You fill it out. You kind of explain the activity. Let's say you come across a prostitute and you just put on the back of the card, got out of a vehicle suspected to be a prostitute. I'm just kind of giving you an example of why we would use a field interview card.
Guys, and then what happens with those field interview cards is they put them into the Varuna system so that they can be used as an investigative tool. We're not going to talk about that part, though, I guess. If he suspected Miss Barnes was residing in a drug house, would that be something that would potentially be used for a field interview card?
Yes, in that case, we would use those.
If you suspected Miss Barnes was a drug dealer, would that be something typically that an officer would want to include in a field interview contact, even if you weren't going to make an arrest that night?
Yes.
Well, in addition to the CIU information, you also obtained, did you not, exhibit number 162. Can you tell us what this is?
Yes. This is a daily activity sheet filled out by each officer, each shift. It goes into the system, just kind of crunches numbers as far as like keep stats on what's going on in their area. This is Officer Venegas' daily activity sheet for this specific date.
And I now remember the question that I was standing here hesitating about. Go back to the field interview cards with me for a minute. Are field interview cards used in community policing the way that you understand it? In other words, in developing relationships with the individuals and obtaining information about them?
No.
Not really.
No.
Oh, okay. And this is Officer Venegas, and I neglected to hand you 168 earlier. Is that the same document, but for Officer Holtzclaw on 2/27 of 2014?
That's correct.
Offer 168.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, State's Exhibit number 168 will be admitted.
When I look at Officer Venegas's card, is there a stop at 15th and Jordan documented on Officer Venegas's daily activity report?
Yes.
And does it show that he assisted an officer?
Yes, it did.
And are the times generally consistent with the times you understood that he was there from about 10 minutes after midnight till about 20 minutes after midnight?
Yes.
All right. On States 168, this would be Officer Holtzclaw's activity log, correct?
Yes.
And if I look here as well, it appears that there's a stop on line 14 at 1530 North Jordan. Is that the actual physical address of the house that Miss Barnes was living in at the time?
That's correct.
What's ATL mean?
Attempt to locate.
All right. And then the time on that though shows what?
That'd be 9:40 p.m. That's 2140 hours. 2200 hours. That's 10 p.m.
Okay. And then if I go down to line 16, it shows a stop at 16th and Jordan, correct?
Yes.
And it says out on, is OSS out on subject?
Yes.
Or what does that mean?
Just they came across the subject. They're going to be out on talking to.
Okay. And then the time for that stop shows 23:15. So, sorry, 11:55 carrying over to 12:15 a.m., correct?
It shows, yeah, 11:35 to 11:55. Yes.
I'm sorry, I got on the wrong line. Yes, you're correct. So 11:35 to 11:55, it shows a 20-minute stop at that location, correct?
Yes.
Oh, but then it shows on line 17, well, a stop at 1600. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Is that a street, Euclid?
Oh my God. Euclid?
It's Euclid.
Don't know
Before-
how to pronounce it.
There,
Ooh.
it's Euclid. Yeah, what an idiot, huh? Well, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
That's not nice of me. But I only know it because I grew up in Southern California, and my grandmother lived by a street called Euclid. But anyway, the thing of it is, what he's talking about right now is irrelevant to, unless he's just trying to make a comparison or teach or something. I don't know, but this is completely irrelevant to any of the stops that have to do with Tabitha Barnes. Completely different location and everything. So I don't know what he's doing here, but I guess we'll see. It's important or not.
I think he's just trying to show that Daniel didn't document every single thing that he did during his entire shift on that page, which
Yeah, probably.
they actually are supposed to get a certain number of points, and different activities are assigned different point values. And you know, some officers would just do the bare minimum and they would write everything down because they had to document everything to get their points in.
Right.
Daniel had so much extra activity that, like, for instance, in an email that we came across from some records that were given in a, I don't know if it was a freedom of, I don't know if it was a subpoena or how these records ended up being produced, the emails from OCPD. There's one that a supervisor says that they got everyone's numbers of activity and someone needed to recheck Holtzclaw because his was so far above all the other people's that it couldn't be right. And then the response is, I checked and it's right. He's just gung-ho. He's a go-getter.
Yeah,
So,
I remember
and
that.
now they're trying to make it look like he's being nefarious by not recording every single thing that he does, which is, it must have been pretty frustrating for him to sit at trial and listen to them. I don't know. Maybe by that point he was
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
effective.
'cause the
I'm
worst-
sure it was.
By the worst of the testimony and accusers is still yet to come, believe it or not. So,
Oh.
yeah, for sure.
Is that a street, you think? Line 12.
That is a street. That is a
Okay.
street. It's pronounced Euclid, and I know that because I understand the English language.
Okay. It shows a traffic stop.
Susan, no, wait a minute. Time out. Susan knows the English language. She knows how to read it. Rocky doesn't. Sorry.
Exactly. Or
And now
Gieger.
this, right. And now this time we're from 11:55 to 15 minutes after midnight. What's going on? It appears to me that although he's putting himself at 15th and Jordan, he's putting himself there at 9 a.m. Excuse me, at 9 p.m., correct?
Yes,
So that would be inconsistent with his AVL, correct?
that's correct.
And then he's back in the location, granted on that a block north, but his CAD call doesn't show him initiating the stop with Miss Barnes until about 7 minutes after midnight, if I'm remembering correctly. Is that right?
Yes,
And then the time that overlaps into the CAD call that he's at 15th and Jordan shows that he's at another location on 1600 Euclid, correct?
yes.
Well, what does that mean to you, if anything, as a police officer or as a detective in this case?
Well, it's really kind of hard to say. What we do is always kind of round up or down just accordingly. Let's say if the call ended at 23:53 hours, and then you just put 23:55. There's a little bit of variance there when you could go on to the next call. So it's hard to say. It really is kind of up to the individual officers of how he's dictating his own time.
They're going to slam him for rounding up or rounding down in a little while. So even though Rocky's testifying,
and they all do it.
yeah,
That's
even
safe.
though Rocky's testifying that it's a normal thing that officers do, you'll see in the testimony somewhere where they slam him for that. And is it in your understanding the common practice of the police department to go back and take their activity log and then compare it to AVL to see if it really matches up? Huh?
Yes,
Really?
I seriously doubt that.
I do too. Does that happen often? No, of course not.
No.
That doesn't happen. They don't have access to the AVL. What's he talking about? The AVL only comes from Joe Hill, who works in the communications division, when you ask for the information. That's bizarre.
Right. That's not just provided unless somebody goes and says, hey, I need this on whatever date and time. This officer, pull it for me. Otherwise, it's just going to stay in the system, right?
Yes.
Right. I mean, they don't need it unless they need to try to locate what an officer was doing or
Right. Exactly.
Right.
So that's
if
a
they-
lie.
If they've lost contact with an officer, they'll pull it up to try to track them. Like if they're not answering their call or whatever. But that's
Okay, I think he
completely
straightens
false.
that out.
Okay. Yeah, that always happens. We always have a big conversation, and then the next line is
Yeah.
misunderstood.
Is the answer.
Does that happen
But at
often?
least that shows our we're forward thinking. We know our shit.
Okay. Well, maybe.
Well,
Does that happen often
No.
in the routine? Yeah. You may have misunderstood my question. Does that happen a lot? Is that something routinely that's done? Is that someone is paid at the police department to look at their activity log and match it up to AVL maps?
No.
In fact, does that ever happen unless there's an investigation or a reason to be looking to figure out where an officer was?
That's correct.
The log sheet that is 164, line 7, Mr. Adams.
Sorry. Lost my place. Your Honor, may I just get a clarification? What date are we talking about here?
You know what? You're absolutely right, and I apologize. It's the wrong date. I was showing him the 325. Thank you.
Yeah.
Forget everything I said about that. I apologize, Judge. I got the wrong one. Let me double check real quick. Thank you, counsel.
Wow.
The questions I wanted to ask, I wanted to ask anyway, though. No one. Does anyone at the police department take these and match them up to the AVLs?
On occasion, in an investigation.
Right there it is.
But only
Yeah.
for a specific reason. It's not something that's done routinely, correct?
That's correct. Then why'd you answer yes? Just a few lines
Exactly.
back.
That's right, Rocky.
All right, and then same with the CIU log. Does anyone? Well, these logs are kept, correct?
Yes.
That's a question. But does anyone go back with the CIU log and try to match up with the activity log to see if they really were running the right person and matching those things up as well?
Only during an investigation.
Well, same question as to the CAD report. Does anyone go back through and routinely look at these?
No.
In fact, are these documents even generated routinely?
No.
Or is it just something that's kept in the database?
Just kept.
So, absent some charge being filed or something being investigated to even look at it, is there even a reason that these would be created?
Nope.
Detective, the next date that Miss Barnes told you about was 25th of March. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And on that date, sir, you were able to also obtain similar documentation as to Mr. Holtzclaw's activity.
Yes.
Approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm going to hand you 169, 170, 171, 172, and 173. All those all documents that are similar to ones we introduced as to the 27th?
Well, that's correct.
And are they accurate copies of what you obtained in your investigation?
Yes.
Offer 169.
No objection.
All right. States Exhibit 169, 170, 71, 72, 73 will be admitted.
Detective, as to the 25th of March.
Really quick before you go any further, there are no there's no AVL maps for the 27th for the burglary. They don't have any AVL maps for Daniel Holtzclaw. And Tabitha Barnes, if you'll remember, said that he was at her home and that he had that's the one where she was in the house and he was in the house and he eye contact her like, don't you say anything. That was the night he was allegedly there to sexually assault her again, but there were too many other cops and family members around.
But they didn't
But he
provide
eye
an ABL?
contact her.
They didn't
There's no
provide an ABL?
AVL. There's no AVL for that night,
Yeah,
for that
'cause-
incident. So
'cause
I'm
it
just
did-
saying.
'cause- yeah.
I think they only pulled AVL for the dates. I mean, that's for the dates that she alleged assaults happened. Yeah, they're just trying to put him there so that they can convict him on those.
Yeah.
So that makes
Contact me. Oh shoot.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like eye contact in someone should be a charge, right?
It
Wasn't
should
that-
be, yeah. It was a nonverbal threat because he eye contact her. Oh, you weren't here last week, Susan, so you don't know. That's what she said in her testimony.
Well, I've
She
heard it
knew he was-
before.
Spike,
It's
Spike, he eye contact me.
eye contact me. And then she asks, I can't remember if it was Gieger or, because this one just kills me, Gieger or Adams, I don't remember. She asked him to repeat the question. She couldn't hear. Her eyes were watering, so she couldn't hear what he said. So I died. I was just dying. Sorry. Anyway. So those are some of my favorites. Okay, go ahead.
You
Sorry.
know, I'm thinking that all of this is like, that's not something common that you love to, compare whether what he said. I'm thinking that Geiger is trying to show that, that they wouldn't possibly have done this before contacting, before talking to her.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's probably coming. Yeah, not pulling
Yeah.
the AVL until she describes what happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Kim Davis is the one who really, drives that one home as much as she can. But that's another interesting one. So
Where are we?
sorry.
Trying
Line-
to figure that out. 12,
Line.
maybe?
Yes, line 12.
Detective, as to the 25th of March, 2014, Miss Barnes had told you that she was told by the defendant that he had entered her house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was that significant to you?
Yes. Was.
Why?
Well, it was just, to me, I took it as very odd that he would tell her, I just have been in your house. It's like he was trying to get a point across.
In your experience, was the fact that this officer had gone into her house without being dispatched to it by the police department or someone calling saying, I need help, interesting or significant to you?
That is significant.
Why?
Well, from what was learned about him going over, there was no call that was made. And for him to enter her house was way out of protocol.
Sir, through your investigation, did you also come in contact with an individual named Terry Williams?
Yes.
And that individual, well, is that the individual Miss Barnes told you at the time was her live-in, now on again, off again, live-in boyfriend?
Oh, yes, but her daughter said he only stayed there once.
And she called him her stepdaddy.
And it's an individual, I believe we also said was a registered sex offender, or she acknowledged that she knew that, correct?
That's correct.
Well, that absolves him from living by a park then.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sleeping in a kid's bedroom. Did you
Yeah.
have an
I meant
opportunity?
I meant to take a screenshot of that on Google Earth of how, because he was illegally, he shouldn't have been there because he was so close to that park. But anyway, I'll have to do that later.
Did you have an opportunity to talk to him?
I did.
I don't want you to tell me what he said at this point in the trial, but did he give you information that was consistent with Miss Barnes' statements that Officer Holtzclaw had told her about being in the house?
Yes.
Did Mr. Williams indicate to you that he in fact had come in contact with the defendant inside the house?
Yes.
And there was some kind of an exchange between the two of them. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Sir, I want to show you State's Exhibit number 169. See that one?
Yes.
All right. Again, you've got 1530 Northeast 15th. That's Miss Barnes' house. Again, another map showing that.
Yes.
On this event, there's several different AVL locating locator spots documented on this map, correct?
Uh-oh. I think we lost Susan.
She drop out?
You don't hear me?
Oh, we
Nope.
didn't.
Ken
Line
not,
14,
didn't you?
we didn't hear you.
Hello?
We do hear
Do
you
you hear me
now.
now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I'm going to show you several of them. There's 325 at 10:05. It shows speed 0, correct?
Yes.
There's one here that shows 9:58 speed 0.
Yes.
There's one that shows 9:44 speed 0.
Yes.
And there's one that shows 9:49 speed 0, all hitting. Is it your understanding the way the system works that they're hitting within the general location of the car being there at that address?
That's correct.
All right. And so if I'm looking at the exhibit correctly, give or take 5 minutes on each end, we've got 9:44 to 10:05. Is that fair?
Yes.
So there's a 20 minutes, but potentially maybe even up to 29 minutes that it could have been at 0 speed the way you understand AVL works.
Yes.
Did you believe that was corroboration of Miss Barnes' statements about him being there on the 25th?
Yes.
Showing you now, and the CAD, the crime incident report 171. See that?
Can you guess my answer? Yes.
And on this one, it shows 3:25:14, and it starts at 9:39:23.
Yes.
I wish you'd just let Rocky interpret the thing, since Rocky doesn't know how. Is
Just
that
ridiculous?
All he said is yes here like 50
Yes,
times.
yes, 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 yes.
Right?
It's all
Right.
leading. Like, it's just every bit of this is leading.
Completely. Where's Adams at?
Sleep.
Come on, Jack.
He's over there trying to figure out what he's going to
Get your
ask?
shit together, man.
Uh,
For real.
Is that essentially consistent with the AVL map?
yes.
All right. Again, the address for State Exhibit 171 shows 1530 North Jordan.
Yes.
This one is closed out. It shows about 10:00:29, right?
Yes.
Does it also appear that it's closed out by using the computer inside the police car the way the record reflects?
Yes.
I want to look down and talk about something right here. On page 2 of this exhibit, throughout the stop, different things can be entered into by the dispatcher. Is that fair?
Yes.
Some are codes, some are other things. But in this comment, when it says drug house door is open, house clear, what's going on with that?
First deal is let the dispatcher know that he's at a drug house. Then he finds that the door is open. And then WA is will advise. That's on backup.
The fact that, and the information drug house, where would that information come from for the dispatcher to put it in there?
From Charlie 45, Officer Hostball.
from, and that would be the case on any CAD, just whatever the officer's telling the dispatcher, they're typing in things that the officer's telling them.
That's correct.
The door is open. Where would that come from?
The officer.
And then eventually, house clear. What does that mean to you as a police officer?
Found no problems. Everything's fine.
So he got a burglary charge for this, for going into this open door where he called in that he was going to do a sweep of a drug house, and then says whatever, that it's clear. They filed a burglary charge against him for that, which he was acquitted on.
Christ.
Unreal.
I
Good
know.
God.
Are we on 4?
Do you think he was gonna burglar it and he called it in?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's
Familiar.
just like calling all these women in and then raping them in the middle of a street with houses all around.
Right.
He calls
Right.
them in, places himself out there with them, and then he's going to rape them and risk someone coming to back him up. Like, what if Venegas is just idle doing
In
nothing?
the street, right?
He decides to drive by and see what's going on over there. Oh, looks like Officer Holtzclaw's raping someone in the middle of the street.
Getting a 3-second blowjob.
Yeah. Everybody needs one. How would you know the house was clear?
The only house. Well, you would know that the house was clear by going inside.
Oh my God.
Even Gregory's probably thinking, why don't you shut up asking these stupid questions?
He's not
And-
asking him any questions. He's just
Or-
telling him things to respond yes or no to.
Or, well, that's right.
And in fact, it says what? Protective sweep. Nothing in plain view. What does that mean to you?
Like there's nothing taken. Plain view, like you would notice if a TV or a couch is gone.
Oh, bullshit. That's not what it
No,
means.
no, that, oh God, that is not what it means, you
See,
dumbass.
that's why he can't ask Rocky questions, because Rocky gives him answers like that and shows how dumb he is. And now he's a homicide detective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that terrifies me.
For Christ's sake, that's crazy.
Nothing was gone. Oh my God.
In the context of a drug house, if it said nothing in plain view, does that have any significance to you?
As far as it being a drug house?
Well, it appears in the context there's a drug house. The door is open. I'm going in. I did a sweep. I didn't see anything in plain view. Is that significant as a police officer after I spell it out to you like that?
Well, yes, he's advising dispatch about he believes that this is a drug house. That's his very first statement to dispatch, letting them know, this isn't just a regular house. And then that the door is open, of course. There could be problems.
Hey, can someone read for me for a second so I can see why my mom's calling?
Yep, I got it.
Okay, I'll be back.
Line 23. Okay, and is when it comes in terms of drugs and things like that are on searches, if an officer sees dope or drugs in plain view, is that terminology kind of a term of art that officers use?
Term of art. Yes.
It was in plain view, so I don't need a warrant to get it. Things like that.
That's correct.
In regards to the location of 1530 Northeast 15th Street, in your investigation, did you have an opportunity to see during the year of 2014 if any drug-related arrests were made at that house? God.
That's correct.
Did you look at the CAD system to see any reports? Not just that Officer Holtzclaw was involved in, but any reports whatsoever about information coming in or calls or activity at 1530 Northeast 15th Street?
I found no references in our database that this was a drug house during 2014.
States Exhibit 172, there's two people that are highlighted on a stop at 325. The 2146, is that consistent with the AVL, the times of Officer Holtzclaw being there?
Yes,
And Daniel Holtzclaw, 1782, that's the commission number, correct?
yes,
The LTHD, is it your understanding that that's the terminal designation for the terminals that's in his police car?
yes,
Okay, and then do we see the names Terry Wayne Williams and Tabitha Barnes? Seeing that, does this mean Officer Holtzclaw ran them through the Varuna system?
yes,
Okay, that's what States 172 tells us, correct?
yes,
Seeing those two names at that location, was that significant to you in your investigation?
yes. It says Tabitha and Terry both stated happened.
All right. Show you Exhibit 403. Do you recognize what that is, sir?
Yes, this is the Varuna information on Terry Wayne Williams.
Offer States 403.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, States Exhibit 403 will be admitted.
Again, there's so many different pieces of paper. Even I've gotten confused this morning. This is showing that they were run in Varuna, correct? And that states number 172.
Asked and answered.
Yes,
I'm back.
Compound question, compound answer statement. Okay, sorry.
But when you actually run someone in Varuna, do you see something on your computer in the police car that's similar? Again, it can contain more information than this one does, but similar to what you see on States Exhibit number 403.
yes,
Okay. Varuna is the database that OCPD has that maintains field interview contacts, any actual reports that were actually generated, and cases that were actually generated by the police department, correct?
yes. I guess so.
Well, when you look at Mr. Williams, if the records reflect Officer Holtzclaw came in contact with him, ran him in the Varuna system, correct?
Yes,
Does it show that he's a registered sex offender?
yes,
So if he looked at what he ran, that should have become apparent. That should have become apparent to him at that time, correct?
well, yes,
Was the fact that Officer Holtzclaw, based on the records, informed of the information about Mr. Williams' status as a sex offender being in that house that Miss Barnes lived in with her children significant to you in your investigation?
why, yes.
Why?
Because if he observed that, if he found documentation that he's a registered sex offender and he knew that there was children in the house, he would have had to have verified whether he could been around children or not.
If he should have done that?
Yes,
In your opinion, as an officer?
yes,
if he did that and learned he wasn't, what, in your opinion, should an officer have done in that situation inside that house?
Well, there's different references you would probably need to get a hold of. Supervisor, advise them of the situation as far as the children, take them into protective custody. That would be pretty drastic. You'd have to investigate further as far as finding out exactly, you know, what his registration dictates as far as how much he can be around children. If these children are his children, things like that.
Well, typically, if that type of an event unfolded as you went into a house for whatever reason, justified or unjustified, but you learned there was a sex offender apparently at least at the house at that time, is that something that would have then resulted in calling in and getting an actual case number and making an additional report and things like that that would be entered into the Varuna system?
Judge, I'm just object. This is all speculation.
Well, time, Adams.
I'll sustain the form of the question.
Was it significant to you in your investigation that a Varuna case number was not assigned upon learning of this information based upon the totality of the information you received about his contact on 325?
That's bullshit.
Yes.
And why?
If, since he already knew that there was children involved in the house, and he comes across the subject, staying there. He was there alone. No one, no supervision. He should have made an incident report for the protection of the children to at least let the registered sex offender unit check it into it further.
Sir, I'm gonna go quickly through these. 173 shows that Officer Holtzclaw was working on 325, correct?
Yes.
All right. That's the lineup. And then on 170 again, it's 325. That's when the log sheet began.
Yes.
This is all the officers who ran individuals after 9:31 p.m.
Yes.
And if you go down again to the shaded area, does it show that Charlie 45, again on 325, ran Miss Barnes and the warrants that were there in February? Are they still there?
Yes.
Do you recall Miss Barnes indicating that on her first contact with Officer Holtzclaw on February 27th, there was discussion about her warrants?
Yes.
Do you recall her saying that the officer said, you're not going to jail, but I want you to take care of those things?
I just want to interject here 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
All of these accusers that came to court, how many of them had warrants, and how many were arrested after they testified?
None of them. Well, I mean, Tabitha Barnes is the only one that got taken into custody. Well, that's not true. Actually, someone did get arrested. But I would, based on everything I know about how this case was put together, I would imagine that happened to make sure that she was testifying. I need to look that up. Do you remember who that was, Rhonda or Cherie?
I feel it was either Sarita Bowen or
Florine Mathis?
Florine Mathis or Sarita Bowen.
Maureen was in jail when that's how they found her. And then Terry Williams got put in jail, I think, just so they could detox her.
Well, a lot of them ended up in jail, yeah.
Yeah.
I think most of them had warrants, but nobody was taken into custody, but it was either Sarita Bowen or Florine. I feel like it was Sarita Bowen who was in custody at the time. possibly Adara as well. Oh, I can't remember. It's been a minute, but yeah.
But these warrants that Tabitha has, these are related to traffic tickets. This is city court, and I know they said failure to appear, but that's, again, failure to appear on a city traffic ticket, which, should result in your arrest, but they're acting like these are criminal
Right.
criminal offenses that he's just overlooking.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
Well,
just
and I
saying
think
it's the
even-
pot calling the kettle black, you know.
mhm.
Yeah. And Kim Davis, I think somewhere, if she hasn't already, is going to testify too that on these city warrants, they would not have, an officer would not have arrested them and taken
Yeah.
them in on a city warrant. So,
Yeah, we heard that
And
testimony.
a lot
Yeah.
of the law enforcement testifies, or in their depositions, they state that, yeah, that's officer discretion if you want to do that or not. But I always thought that on a failure to appear, that was an automatic warrant out for your arrest. And if there's a warrant out, that
on that, yeah, that's what I thought too.
but I don't recall there being any warrants.
No. Not for a failure to appear. No, not that I remember.
Sherry had some, didn't she? Or was that just that she wasn't paying on her tickets or something?
Sherry Ellis.
Yep.
Yeah, Sherry Ellis was late.
Hers
on
was about
her,
fines. Yeah.
on her city fines, which those weren't resulting in any bench warrants being issued at that time. She would skip a month and then make a payment and skip a month and make a payment. Until she was like 2 or 3 months behind, they wouldn't issue a warrant. It's kind of interesting to go look at OSCN at all of the different dockets, sheets for how many times, especially like Rosetta Great, how many times she gets arrested, she gets out, she doesn't do what she, doesn't make her court date or whatever, gets arrested again. She can get arrested 3 or 4 times before an issue is ever even comes to a preliminary hearing. It's crazy.
I'm gonna guess she doesn't care for law enforcement much.
No. Rosetta, or probably none of them, but
any of them, all of them. Yeah.
And we also, I expect Kay will do this, but we, you could do, really good revenge. Now that the youngest accuser is out of prison now, we need to definitely start keeping our eye on, is she in Oklahoma City? Or
I'm not sure about it.
So, okay, we'll have to check. Okay, anyway. Yeah.
Now it's been 2 days short of a month, and based upon State's Exhibit number 170, does Officer Holtzclaw come in contact with her and run her again?
Yes, he does.
Is it significant to you that after a month he's taken, that there's no arrest?
Yes.
Why?
He did give her the leeway to not arrest her on the first incident. Going a month later, come across it again, and she didn't take care of him. Usually at that time, still the discretion of the officer, but the arrest should have been made.
Now, the exhibit that I put on mistakenly before is actually his activity log for 325. Is that, make sure we're right. Is that right?
Yes, of course.
And for the times, him being at that address, this one right here, the 1530 North Jordan, and again, The ATL means attempt to locate, correct? Dang it,
Yes.
okay. And then it shows essentially the times that we're talking about for this contact on that. He logged it on his activity log, correct?
Yes.
All right. Detective, do you recall Miss Barnes talking about the officer coming out the very next day when she was on the telephone or calling her mother after he showed up?
Yes.
Did you look through 326 to see if there was any indication by Officer Holtzclaw that he was then again back at that location the very next day?
That's correct.
I'm going to hand you 175, 176, 177, and 178. Are those similar documents that you obtained as you did for the February 27th and March 25th?
Yes.
And they're accurate, correct?
Correct.
Offer those, counsel.
No obligation, Your Honor. I'm still sleeping.
All right. States Exhibit 175, 176, 77, 78 will be admitted.
Detective, I don't remember the exhibit number, but do you remember I think we got to it on Friday. It might have been Thursday night. The phone records for Miss Barnes showing that she called Miss Prince, her mother. You saw those in this investigation, correct?
Yes.
Was that significant to you?
Yes.
And it may be obvious, but why?
Tabitha advised she made contact with her mom, Gloria Prince. I also spoke with Gloria, verified that there was a phone call made while Officer Holtzclaw was present. And far as phone records, that verified their statements that there was a phone call during those times that Officer Holtzclaw, we place him there through AVL and through dispatch.
Well, on March 26th of 2014, as you researched this event, was Officer Holtzclaw dispatched to go to this house? Or was there a call saying, come to this house?
No.
Was it significant to you that now Officer Holtzclaw had gone back the very next day to this same house?
Yes.
Why?
Because that, again, seemed very odd. Nothing showed why he would go back to that residence the very next day.
Whenever you spoke with Miss Barnes, and do you recall her saying that when he came back on the 26th, she was mad and he accused her of selling, getting a tip that she had sold a rock of crack cocaine? Do you remember her testifying to that?
Yes, I do.
Do you also remember her saying that you were in the house yesterday? What are you talking about?
Yes.
Well, at this point, based upon what you were seeing, did you believe her interpretation of those events to be corroborated by the documents that you're seeing?
Yes.
Well, I'll show you states number 175. Again, we have 1530 Jordan highlighted, correct?
Yes.
And again, for example, at 7:13:59, he's at 0 speed. Do you see that?
Yes.
And again, based upon the phone records, do you recall that that was consistent with the times of the phone records that Miss Barnes says that he came up and stood on her porch?
Yes.
And again, it's a 9-minute window before and after, based on AVL, the way we understand it works, correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
States number 177 is a lineup showing that Officer Holtzclaw was on duty on 3/26.
Yes, and I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody look at what Daniel had done earlier that day? Stopped anybody that he compensated crap from?
Is
Pretty-
is this the day that he stopped Florine Mathis not even a block away?
Around the
After he
corner. Yeah,
after he saw her
believe so.
leave Tabitha's house.
yes, I believe so.
But as far as
26.
getting AVL for, the state provided AVL and they started it and cut it off whenever it best suited them. So
All right.
as far as just being able to track his car and look at his whole patterns of what he was doing, I
I'm
guess
just
that
wondering
wasn't
if
an option.
if he recorded a bust for that.
Mm,
Would he say that she had sold some?
I've not seen a report like that, but we don't really have any reports outside of what the accusers' names are, at least as far as I know.
But
Maybe.
also,
You know what I mean?
they also train their officers to lie to people.
Yes,
too,
yes,
so-
they do.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And after, as you guys know, I made a major fuck up on that whole day, but because previously I had not seen I couldn't find anywhere in any AVL for that day where he had actually stopped around Tabitha's house. But I did find one, and I think it was less than 5 minutes that he was there. And but the other part about that is that she said that every time she mentioned this day, she says that he came in the old black and white car. So we know that didn't happen. So he was there hours later than what she claimed he had been there. Because she said it was right when he came on shift. Remember how she could smell that stinky cologne, and he'd have his hair all moosed up with, right when he came on shift, she said. Yeah. But his AVL doesn't show him there until after 7:00 that night. And it's only for, I think it's 5 minutes, I think is a 5-minute window. I could have to check again. But the reason
So
that
maybe this
Sorry?
was some other cop that did this. Is that what you
it
said?
had to be. It had to be because,
Right.
because Daniel didn't drive. If for no other reason, we know it wasn't Daniel because he didn't drive
Right.
that old black and white car. So
Right. I'm sorry. Where are we? I'm lost.
21 maybe?
line, 21.
What page?
2030.
Okay.
Page 56 of the document.
Yeah.
And it's Officer Holtzclaw's activity log.
Yes.
Okay. Now when I look at 175 again, the AVL map, I want to see that it appears that for example, this hit right here, can you see that?
Yes.
That's at 5:36:24, and he's going 4 miles an hour, correct?
Yes.
And then the hit that I showed you a minute ago was apparently 2 hours later when he's at 0 speed, and there's several showing low speeds at around that same time in the 7:00 hour. Is that right?
Yes.
What does that mean to you? That there's 2 5:00 times, and then there's 7:00 times as well Let me rephrase. Could he have driven by at 5 and come back at 7:02, and it's just showing the location of 2 Charlie 45 at that location?
Yes, there are times just taken where I was requested to be placed on this map. What?
I guess someone asked him to place certain times on the map, and he's dumb, and he just said that in court.
Yeah. So what is it they say now? He said the quiet part out loud.
Well,
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Does
Hey,
this
Jack.
show?
sorry, I'm
Yeah.
going to send you a message, Jack. Go ahead and keep reading. I'm going to put a message in the private chat for you, Jack.
Okay. Yeah.
Does this show, according to your understanding of the AVL system, that, and if you notice down at the very bottom, I haven't shown you that one, but there's a 5:36 time, and you can't quite read how many knots he's going, but he's driving there on Jordan, correct?
That's correct.
Do you remember Miss Barnes saying that Officer Holtzclaw would drive by a lot during this time period?
Yes.
Does that seem to be corroborated of this?
Yes.
All right. States number 176. This is the CAD call that was generated apparently close in time to the 0 speed when it shows he stopped at that address, correct?
Yes.
And again, I don't think I got all the way through this, but on this activity log, there's a 1505 North Jordan. Do you see that one?
Yes.
An attempt to locate, but 1900 hours would be approximately 7 o'clock. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. 1505 is not 1503. I think he meant to say.
He
Okay.
corrects himself.
But it's close. Would you agree? Or 1530. I'm sorry. 1505 is not 1530.
That's correct.
But it appears to be that matches up that he was attempting to locate a subject, right?
Yes.
Okay. When we see what Officer Holtzclaw apparently called into the dispatcher, he shows 1504 North Jordan, correct?
Yes.
Is there a 1504 North Jordan?
Just an empty lot.
It's not an
Okay.
empty lot. Sorry.
Okay, so there's a lot, but no house there. But again, it looks like we're talking close in time to the 7:09:58 is when this call by the dispatcher was logged into the computer.
Yes.
According to this, it was closed out about 6 minutes later at 15 minutes after 7 and 46 seconds, correct?
That's correct.
It also appears, does it not, that it was logged out by the officer doing it himself on the computer.
Yes.
The time of being 6 minutes there, was that significant to you in your investigation?
Yes. Tabitha stated in her comments to me that he was only there for just a short period of time. And that's kind of verified here.
Again, though, when I look down at the comments section, you see again that 2 Charlie 45 is saying that he's going into a crack house.
Yes.
Well, based upon your investigation of this case and all the contacts at 1530 North Jordan, have you found any information to justify Officer Holtzclaw's comments that this appears to be a crack house?
Well, he said 1504, right?
Yeah. And if he got out of his car at that area, which attempt to locate, he's gonna get out of his car. All he's doing is giving them a location of where he is just to keep in contact.
Right. And
I just
I
think
have a
this
Google.
may have been somewhere other than her house.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It is. I have a Google map that I did quite a bit of work on to show it. Really quick, Jack is going to start sharing. I'm gonna look for some other stuff that I want to show you guys. So Jack is going to share his screen. You'll read from his screen. You ready to switch,
Yeah,
Jack? Sorry, guys.
It's there just whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Actually
It's
reading
shared.
off the
There you go.
PDF now.
Are we on 21
Uh,
or no? Next page.
No,
I,
it's
I think
yeah,
you read
line
21.
one. Yeah, line 1.
In
Yeah,
fact,
I
have you
that's
found
right.
evidence to the contrary?
Yes,
Clearly, Miss Barnes uses drugs.
clearly.
Okay, is there a difference between using drugs and living in a crack house?
Yeah.
In your experience as a police officer?
Can you hear me?
No.
Didn't hear you say that.
Hello?
I mean, now I can hear you.
That's weird. Yes.
And it may be obvious, but what's the difference?
You have a lot of people that's just recreational users. We make reference to crack houses and things. It's being dealt. It's dope flows kind of freely in and out of those type of houses. There's a lot of people that use drugs just for their own personal use.
Detective, in regard to my question a moment ago about Miss Barnes' assertion that she would see Officer Holtzclaw on many occasions, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Have you been able at least to locate through the AVL system of going to Jordan between 14th, 15th, 16th Streets, the times that 2 Charlie 45 would drive by that house while he was on duty?
Yes.
Are there many, many times?
Several times.
It seems like we already established that she's a liar by what she said to the judge last week, denying using any drugs and then getting busted with a drug screen. So
Right.
they've just put all their faith into her now. That's
Yeah,
sick.
I tend to think it was a drug house. She
so did
sold
Dan.
drugs. Yeah.
Was that significant to you in your investigation?
Yes, because she said, and the kids did say, they would see him around the house quite a bit. So that just verified one more thing for us.
In your investigation, detective, were you able also, not specifically to Miss Barnes, but to locate other women, at least 2 other women that came in contact with Officer Holtzclaw, that reports were subsequently made in this case that occurred basically at that same location, the 15th and Jordan intersection?
Yes.
And although Miss Barnes is not involved in those stops, would that also be corroborative of this officer going up and down that location? God, it's his fucking district. Come on, man.
Exactly. And there's crack houses, you know.
What's he supposed to be doing?
God.
That's hard to swallow, man. Would it also be... Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Can now.
Okay.
Would it also be corroborative of her characterization of her neighborhood? I think both by Mr. Adams and myself, is it's a place where prostitutes were in a high crime area.
Judge, I object just to the form as leading.
Oh, he's leading now.
Sustain it as to the form.
Jesus.
I'm going to show you 404, 405, 406. Are those AVL maps that are relevant to my line of questions about Officer Holtzclaw being at the location there on 15th Street, or at least close to that location at 0 speeds?
Yes.
Offer.
Judge, may we approach?
Come on up.
Judge, these are documents that, again, were not listed on the government's exhibit list. And again, this is some documents that I had requested during the pendency of this trial, probably like on, I think about last Wednesday. I requested them and was provided them on Friday. And again, it goes to the whole problem in regards to me trying to defend Mr. Holtzclaw. Everything I'm getting, I'm having to go through the government to get. And if it's favorable in my part, then I can see it, and if it's unfavorable, they can use it as a sword against me. And I object to that being it's a violation of Mr. Holtzclaw's due process rights, and therefore I do object on these being introduced because they were never previously disclosed until I requested them.
When were they disclosed?
Last week sometime. Mr. Adams is correct. He asked if we had other dates when he was at 0 speeds other than had already been produced. So we looked and gave them to him.
But they weren't provided by the state prior to?
Not before he asked for them.
All right, I'll sustain the objection.
Just for what? I'm curious what the legal grounds are.
Well, they weren't provided 10 days before trial in the discovery code, correct?
They weren't created before that.
That's the reason then.
Okay.
Jeez.
Wow.
Why, Judge? Why? That's not
Yeah.
fair to me. Detective, were there other dates that you located that not only you drove by, but they're actually at 0 speeds?
Yes.
All right. And was that significant to you in your investigation also?
Yes, it was.
Okay. In addition to February 27th, March 25th, and March 26th, did you also receive information during your investigation about Mr. Holtzclaw being at that location, 1530 Northeast 15th Street on April the 8th?
Yes.
And was that specifically in regard to a contact that he had with Mr. Williams, the gentleman we've been referring to who had the prior sex offense conviction?
Yes.
Sir, I'm going to hand you, give me just a minute and make sure I have all the right ones. I'm going to hand you States Exhibit 180, 181, 182, 183, 184, 185. Are these similar documents that you obtained in your investigation in regard to the activities at that location on April the 8th, 2014?
Yes.
Are they accurate?
That's correct.
I'd offer those, Your Honor.
Judge, I object to these under relevance grounds, and if I need to approach, I will.
Come on. These are all April 8th.
Your Honor, you haven't heard from Terry Williams yet because he's on a bus and should be here within an hour from Lawton. I was trying to avoid having to recall Detective Gregory again, but just go ahead and put in the location that Officer Holtzclaw was there and ran him.
Does it go to a charge count?
I don't think we alleged anything, specifically anything occurred on that date, but I think it is relevant in that it corroborates Mr. Williams, who is going to say that Officer Holtzclaw told him during his contact in the house on March 25th that every time he sees him, he's going to hassle him. He doesn't need to be around here. That again on April the 8th, he and another gentleman, Mr. Hawkins, are at that location. Officer Holtzclaw does come up for no apparent reason, runs them through Varuna, detains them for a while, double check the comments, and therefore it's corroborative of what Mr. Williams is going to say, as well as what Miss Barnes has said, that because he kept coming to her house and because he kept having contact with her and her family, that she was in fear and, in fact, eventually moved away. Well, moved out, then moved back. Those types of things.
Boarded up to make it look like she moved away?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
If it's simply, and I don't object to the authenticity of the documents, I want to make that clear. I object on the relevance ground because it's not a charged account in this case.
Okay, this is the problem I'm having with, we've got Ms. Barnes stating that the defendant allegedly said to her about being in her house, you're going to have a witness testify, apparently, that he came in the house and did whatever he did. But to put on other stops in the future of just messing with him or hassling him, that's the problem I'm having.
Well, it corroborates what Mr. Williams is going to say, because he says he's going to say the officer told him, when I see you here, I'm going to stop you every time. And it's exactly what he said. And he had no grounds to be in the house. To begin with, it's the state's position. It's an unlawful entry. He's found this gentleman as a registered sex offender, ran him through Varuna. He didn't arrest him. He knows he's in the house with children there. It all goes to show in their inferences that I think this jury needs to know that even a month later, he's still not arresting her boyfriend. He's still trying to make contact with Miss Barnes, and I think it's relevant as to all those issues. I don't know that I certainly don't think the prejudice outweighs the relevance of it. And again, he's running him through the same systems. Again, he even puts it on his activity log and he runs him. Got to find it again. He runs him through CIU, and CIU tells him he's a sex offender.
Well, this is the problem. It's really not relevant right now.
Okay.
See what I'm...
And I can call Detective Gregory to talk about it, to get these documents in after Mr. Williams testifies. I mean, I understand what the court's saying. I've laid a foundation that this detective contacted him without getting into the hearsay. And so we have another witness. I can wrap up with him, and then we can put Mr. Williams on and then call Detective Gregory back.
Well, this is the way the court has to look at it. I've got an objection to relevance. I don't really see that they're relevant right now.
Okay. Even with Miss Barnes saying that he comes in contact with my boyfriend, I think the hearsay came in that my boyfriend was in the house when the officer was there.
In the house? I mean...
That's right. This is outside the house now.
But a month later, or a week or two later.
Couple of weeks later.
All right. Well, I'll sustain it right now.
Okay. Detective, I'm going to come back to these potentially a little bit later, all right?
Okay.
As I said a moment ago in regard to Mr. Williams, he gave you additional information that you deemed relevant in your case.
Yes, he did.
And as a result of that, you obtained the exhibits that I referenced just a moment ago. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you ever see in your investigation whether or not Mr. Holtzclaw filled out a field interview card for any contact he might have had with Terry Williams, a sex offender living at this house, to notify the Varuna system that now we know where this sex offender is and he's at this address? Notify the
No.
Varuna system. Attention, Varuna system. There's a sex offender here. What the hell?
Stupid.
No.
The fact that he did not do that, was that significant to you?
In reference to children being in the home, yes. Not being investigated.
Detective, in your experience as a police officer, going back to the events that happened on March 25th, the date that Officer Holtzclaw was purported to go into the house and what the documents indicate, phrase the question the right way. Is the
Judge
fact
saying that?
No, he's saying it.
I think he's
Weird.
talking to himself now.
Yeah.
My God.
I think he means to say, I'm going to phrase the question the right way. Is the fact at this point in your investigation that he entered the house significant to you? And do you know of any justification he had to go into the house that day?
No.
Do you remember? One second. Do you remember Miss Barnes talking about Officer Holtzclaw having the $20 in the back of his patrol car?
Yes.
Sir, during your investigation, did you become aware of another victim who said something similar in that regard?
I believe there was another victim, yes.
Was that significant to you?
Yes.
Why?
More corroboration.
Have you ever been trained in the academy, or have you ever learned in your experiences of a tactic that officers have to leave money in the back seat of a police car for any reason? I guess that if you put someone in, then they would come in contact with that money. Have you ever heard of that being done before?
No, never.
Do you think of, well, here's the thing. At this time, his partner was a former gang, was Rob High, who Daniel was in the gang unit with. And the gang unit is who taught Daniel to do that as an honesty test. So I guarantee you that Rocky has talked to Rob High about the 20, and he knows that
Yeah.
he was trained that way by the gang officer. So that's so disingenuous, but this whole case is. So can you think of any valid reason that a police officer would want to do that?
Nope.
Judge, I'd object to speculation.
Overruled. Based on your training and experience, you can answer the question.
No, sir.
During your investigation, detective, and also you worked with Detective Davis as well with the individuals that she took the lead on. Is that right?
Yes.
During your investigation, or hers, that she has shared information with you on, have you received any information that the victims, alleged victims, had met, knew each other, or had relationships with each other, or anything like that?
I never came across that. No.
Not true.
Yep.
Whenever you interviewed Miss Barnes, or as far as you know, any contact with Miss Barnes throughout the pendency of this investigation, has she ever, to your knowledge, come in contact or had a conversation with an individual named Carla Johnson?
Nope.
Is it your memory that Miss Johnson is the other individual that talked about $20 being in the back seat?
I believe so.
Judge, I'd object to the form of the question.
Sustained.
Do you know if Miss Johnson talked about $20 in the back seat?
Same objection, Your Honor.
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor.
All right.
Detective, is it significant to you, knowing those facts, that both victims, that two separate victims on two separate events would talk about that happening?
Yes.
$20.
Yes.
And again, why?
You having two separate victims that don't know each other bring up a certain fact of what happened to them, what they witnessed, that's pretty big. That stands out.
Were you in the courtroom whenever Miss Barnes was asked if she knows someone named Flo?
I believe so.
Is another victim in this case named Florina Mathis?
Oh, yes.
Despite them knowing each other, through your investigation, did you learn that they at any time met and were able to corroborate stories or get together, at least as far as you can tell?
I never come across anything of that.
How the
Judge,
hell
may
would
I-
they be able to tell that?
Judge,
Get
may
that
I
sentence.
approach?
Come on up.
This is something that I can talk about on cross-examination. I understand it, but it's a total misrepresentation of the evidence, and it's prejudicial to Mr. Holtzclaw. I'm the one that was told by the government that Flo has spent the night with Miss Barnes before, and they do know each other. And now he's up here saying he didn't come across anything or heard anything, doesn't know anything about Flo and Miss Barnes know each other. And I know I can cover that on cross, but to me, I think as an officer of the court, I need to bring it up to the court's attention. I don't know if they're baiting me here or what's going on, but I was told specifically that they do. And that she has at least spent the night there one time and they know about it and they disclosed that to me. So I don't know where this is headed, if they're baiting me or what, but I wanted to make a record of it.
Judge, I don't think I'm misrepresenting anything. I've disclosed that to counsel. My question was, do you have any information that they got together and talked about these two cases? What I
That's
intend
not
to
what he
do,
said.
I'm not baiting counsel. What I intend to do is when Miss Mathis takes the stand, point out that she was incarcerated during a lot of this time period, I believe, and that and that although they did spend the night together on occasion, once this investigation started, I believe she was incarcerated all the way until preliminary hearing. I'll double check it, but that's where I'm going with it. I'm not trying to bait him into anything, nor am I misrepresenting anything. In fact, I've disclosed things that are not contained in the police reports when I learn of them because I thought they were relevant to his cross-examination, because I thought he might want to ask them, do you know each other, and see what they say.
So he gets them to intentionally say no, so I have no choice but to ask him. But again, I've been provided no documents or anything that would support these verbal statements that the DA has made. So it's extremely troubling that I'm told one thing and they ask or witness something exactly the opposite.
What did I ask different, Mr. Adams? What I said was, do you have any evidence they got together and corroborated and got their stories together That was the question I asked.
I challenge the record. We can read it back.
Read it back.
He asked him if they ever
Well,
judge.
what is your specific objection? That there's not a document to?
No, my specific objection here is what's concerning me is I'm getting verbal information from the DA's office that Flo and Miss Barnes have spent the night together.
Okay.
Then he specifically asked just a minute ago, have you obtained any information or evidence that Florence Matthews and Tabitha Barnes know each other?
That's not what I asked.
I challenge the record.
Challenge it.
Well,
And specifically, what I told Mr. Adams is Miss Barnes said, Miss Mathis said she has spent the night in the house. He didn't tell me if Tabitha was there. He didn't tell me they talked. He didn't tell me any of those things. That's what I told counsel.
well, this is the thing. At times, I know information is conveyed from the DA's office to defense about certain situations, maybe even dates, times, acquaintances, and sometimes a witness gets up there and says something different. So if they say something different, then that's ripe for inquiry of cross-examination.
Okay. Again, Your Honor, the only reason I brought it up to the court's attention, I understand in written documents or if I'm told something verbally like that, and then the question is thrown out there the way it was. I'm just sitting back there assuming he's going to say, yes, we did, but we can't really substantiate any of it or something to that effect. But it was an adamant quote unquote no. And I'm like, then why was I told all this?
Well, I don't know if the witness has got it wrong or somebody else has got it wrong, but you can inquire on cross-examination.
Detective, I want to be clear because maybe I misspoke. My question to you was, do you have any evidence that Miss Mathis, Flo or Florine Mathis, and Miss Barnes got together and conspired together to come up with a consistent story?
Change the freaking question is what
Yeah,
he
that
just
wasn't
did.
even close.
No.
No.
Sir, I'm going to hand you 186. Do you know what 186 is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's the recorded radio traffic on February 27th and March 25th and March 26th, 2014 of Officer Holtzclaw.
There's been a lot of conversation about the documents that are generated, but through your investigation, were you able to actually capture the actual communication between Officer Holtzclaw and the dispatchers for different events and the dates that you just referred to?
Yes.
Oh,
he made that sound.
captured them?
He made that sound like that. Rocky Gregory went out and did this amazing thing. He went to the freaking dispatcher's office and said, "I want a recording of these dates." Come on,
Hey,
man.
Joe Hill, could you email me those recordings?
Yeah.
And as they talk, are they using codes and things like that are familiar to the police officers and what they mean?
That's correct.
And is the conversation basically very limited, but yet it does exist, correct?
Yes.
Offer states
Yes.
186.
I have no objection as long as it is the dates referenced by the detective.
Okay, well, I didn't catch all those dates, but he read them so fast.
227, 325, and 326.
All right, State's Exhibit 186 will be admitted.
First, Detective, I'm going to turn your attention to February 27th. And do we have what we call both radio traffic, which is talking to the CAD dispatcher, and crime information traffic?
Yes.
Okay. The CAD call? The dispatcher first. The state plays 186. Detective, it's kind of hard to make that out, but the female voice is the dispatcher.
Correct.
And when you heard the male voice, do you assume that that's Officer Holtzclaw? And if so, why?
Gives out his call number.
Which is?
Charlie 45.
All right. And essentially what he's saying there.
He's putting himself out on traffic, 15th and Jordan, just to the west, given a location. He's also given out the tag that's also, he's pulling over in his traffic stop where he stopped.
And now I think the next one will be the Crime Information Unit report for 227. State's Exhibit 186 is played. Detective, I think that was a little easier to understand, but was that the Crime Information Unit indicating that Miss Barnes had 3 warrants?
That's correct.
All right. He couldn't say what it actually said, which was 3 city warrants. He left that out.
Of course.
Which was the actual transcript. All right, turn your attention to March 25th of 2014. And on this one, the radio traffic that we have is the Crime Information Unit. Is that correct?
Yes.
State plays 186. Those recordings obviously have a computer timestamp on them, and it's kind of hard to hear, basically.
Yes.
But is that Officer Holtzclaw based upon the call sign calling again on Miss Barnes and receiving information that the warrants are still there?
That's correct.
Warrants? Okay. I'm not sure about that. On the next day, March 26th, 2014, we have him contacting the dispatcher and putting himself out at that location. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. They play when it states 186. And consistent with the CAD run, he puts himself out at that location, and Miss Barnes saying he came to her house. Fair enough?
Yes. 1505 North Jordan really doesn't actually exist, but it's the same location.
All right. So in that report, the CAD call, and again, I'm not positive which one it was, but for the record, 1505 is what he said.
Yes.
On the radio traffic.
Yes.
But we know we're addressed to have been 1530 Northeast 15th Street. Huh?
Yes. He's down the street. It's not over.
Yeah.
I was going to say, 1505 and 1530 are not the same location.
That's the other end of the block.
No, and I finally found it. I have the Google Earth map I made to show that whenever you guys are, excuse me, I think as soon as you guys finish up with this direct, then I can show it to you.
Okay.
I don't know if I asked you or not, but is that location in Oklahoma County?
Oh my God.
You got to get that in.
Yes, it is, Gieger. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Your Honor, I think that's all the questions I have at this point.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's about 10:30, so we'll take the morning break. I need to admonish you again to not discuss the case, not to let anyone discuss the case with you. Don't try to find out anything about the case. Leave your notepads in your chair. If anyone should try to talk to you or contact you about the case, contact me and my staff immediately. Mr. Holtzclaw, you'll be excused until 10:50. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you'll be in recess till 10:50. All right, thank you. We'll be in recess.
Okay, we're gonna not do cross-examination tonight. There's no way. We're already at 3 hours and we've only read what, less than 100 pages. So
81 pages.
yeah, so there's no way. And we're going to hold off on cross-examination until next week because it's too long. It's too late. So, so thank you, Jack, for scrolling that. I wanted to show you really quick, just to give you guys an idea of the locations of what they were just talking about, 1505. And I think that this is because I think that, all right, let me see how that's looking. Nope. I'm going to make this a complete screen. There we go. I think that Officer Holtz. So this is, I put in 1505 North Jordan Avenue in Google Maps, Google Earth. This is where the pin landed, right here exactly in this location. I also, and I don't know where they're at, I'll try to have them ready for you for next week though, where I did the street view of all of this. And initially, I think Rocky Gregory said that he drove to this location and there's nothing around here, 1505 North Jordan Avenue, but empty lots. It's not quite as easy to see from this, but there are no empty lots. This house right here on this corner faces south. This house right here on this corner faces north. This house, I think, faces, actually, I think, anyway, there's houses on every corner. This is a big backyard. This is a big backyard. This is Tabitha Barnes's yard. I think that Daniel Holtzclaw, whatever his call was, attempt to locate or whatever, I think he knows where Tabitha lives. This is on the 26th, if I'm not mistaken. He knows where Tabitha lives. He knows this is her house right here. I don't know what his reasoning would be for calling in that address, except to just make himself known of where he was, perhaps. I think he was watching activity, though. He had stopped the day before on the 25th. He had stopped Florine Mathis right around here by Tabitha's house the day before. So he knows that, there's drug activity going on here. And no, he didn't. He hadn't necessarily flagged it as a trap house or anything like that, but he's watching it for that reason. And I think that's why, but Rocky Gregory tried to make it sound like it was all nefarious by saying nothing here but empty lots. The only thing that's empty are the yards on those corners.
Yeah, the backyard behind 1505. He could probably say that about. And then going up toward Tabitha's house across Jordan. I don't know if there's anything built on that lot or not. It's hard to tell.
I'm not sure where you're. So,
but
this is a house. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that house is backyard, 1505's backyard.
Yeah.
And then up toward the direction of Tabitha's house, that lot above this one doesn't look like there's anything on it. But still, 1505 and 1530, he tried to say they're basically the same location.
No, they're not. And that pin is actually not a house. I got the addresses for all four of these houses. I don't know where that one is. It pisses me off that I can't find it. But I have all the addresses for all of these. this is just, there is no 1505. This is where the pin dropped because it's basically kind of where it would be. So
Well,
yeah,
at
and
first
Rocky,
he had 1504 was when he
right,
said that was an
yes,
empty lot.
yes. 1504, I think, was closer this direction, west, if I'm not mistaken.
But
Because if he goes, no, it couldn't be.
wait,
No,
that's
it's
not.
got to be on Jordan.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
got to
that's
be on
not
Jordan.
correct.
So, anyway, I have it. I'll find it or I'll remake it again because it was pretty interesting how Gregory tries to say this is an empty lot. And I know that this is a backyard, and I'm pretty sure this is also a backyard, but we can't see the house to it because it's all covered with trees and stuff. If I'm remembering correctly. So
Well,
anyway, go ahead.
that's gonna be that first house right there. Yeah, that's gonna
Which
be
one?
1501.
Yeah, this is 1501. You're right. Exactly right.
So I
I
mean,
remember that.
1505 could be a vacant lot, but
I'll
I
get
mean,
If
I'll
that's
get
not
it
a
again.
backyard, could have
those are
been
huge
subdivided into that.
backyards.
They
I
are,
took
but
the
all these
street
houses
view.
seem to have them.
I took the street view and I set the history back to it was actually May of 2014,
Oh, okay,
and
cool.
these were big backyards.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
so for these, at least for these houses on the corner right here, for sure, I have no doubt. But up here, I think there's a house, and so while this looks like a vacant lot, even still, Gregory's saying it was back here. So he's just such a liar. God, he's a liar.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be 1528 on the other end of the block. So
Yeah. Yep.
that's not.
They're
That's
not
gonna
the
be
same
50.
location. They're
Yeah.
not the
No,
same
definitely
place,
not.
like he said. It's just
Yeah.
I mean,
stupid.
it's easy to say all this stuff to the jury because he just keeps
Yeah.
rolling through things and saying a bunch of different crap. They can't keep up. And if they're taking
Yeah.
notes, they're missing the next thing that he's saying. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
And he's got
Exactly.
such long question. Can you call them questions?
No.
Every time he speaks, they're like 10 sentences long. It's like,
And they're even if there are questions in
Compound,
there,
yeah.
they're compound questions. I don't know who's worse, this guy, Gayland Gieger, or honestly,
Lally.
that Lally guy. Yeah,
Lally.
that Lally guy.
it's Gieger.
I think Giger's
Yeah.
worse. I really think Giger's worse. I really do.
That's saying
Anyway,
a lot.
so, huh?
That's saying a lot.
It is saying a lot because Lally, whatever his name is, he's bad. Anyway, so we're gonna finish we're gonna do cross-examination next week, and I will try to work on those maps. I'll find the one that I had already made, or I'll make another one. But tonight, I'm just going to end with a video that I've shown you guys at least 10 times throughout our time together. But I want to show it to you again because I don't think we just can't hear this enough. At the end of this video, this is going to be the end of our live stream when this video ends. So we'll say our goodbyes now. Thank you all so much for hanging out and for commenting in the chat. And those of you who are lurking, I think there's several lurkers from what I can see. Thank you to those who are continuing to subscribe. We've had a couple more subscribers since last week, so that's great. And I was going to say one more thing, but I can't remember what it was, so it doesn't matter. Just until I'm going to play this video, like I said, and then we're just going to say, oh, I just wanted it. Anybody on the panel have any final comments that they'd like to make before we end this for the night?
Well, we
I'm
need to get
good.
with Gieger. We need to get with Gieger and find out what that address is. Was it 15th and Jordan? Yes, 15. I'm sorry. No, I'm good. I'm just being a jerk.
Well, it's okay because he deserves it.
No doubt.
Okay. All right. If that's everything, then remember I have a Cash App now if you'd rather make a one-time donation to help with Daniel's defense or FOIAs for this case, or anything that we might need to help out with. Also, in the description, I have put a link to Jenny Holtzclaw's Facebook page. She posted a week or two ago about a fundraiser, I guess you could call it, having to do with old shoes that you're no longer using anymore. Check out that link in the description, and check out her little presentation that she does and how she's what she's got to say about another way that we can help support Daniel. If that is everything, I'm going to play this video on our way out, and we will see you all back here next Thursday, 5 p.m. Central. And until then, peace out.
How many times did Holtzclaw touch you inappropriately?
He didn't touch me.
He never touched you?
No.
Next to the third to the last line says, Holtzclaw then asked Plaintiff Barnes if there was anything under her breast and fondled Plaintiff Barnes's naked breast. Do you see that?
You just read it. Yes, I see it, sir.
Isn't that different than what you testified today?
What do you mean, is that different?
Didn't you say Holtzclaw didn't touch you?
He didn't touch me.
So this is a mistake.
He did not touch me.
Okay, and if you go back to Defendant's Exhibit number 11, which is the information, count 1.
Go ahead.
5 lines from the bottom of count 1, directing TB to expose her breast and then touching her bare breast with his hand without her consent. That's also a mistake.
He didn't touch me.
Okay? And you understand that Mr. Holtzclaw was convicted of sexual battery on that count as a result of your testimony?
Yes.
So that would have been a lie?
What would have been a lie?
The fact that he was charged with touching you.
I don't know what he was charged with. I know he was charged with 3 counts of me exposing myself.
Okay.
Just one further question, Ms. Barnes. You would agree, would you not, that you have to be 100% truthful about what you've told us today for you to prevail in your lawsuit?
Yes.